Oh boy, I've been here for an hour. Welcome to Getting to Green. My name is Kevin, and if you're building an app that has notifications, you may run into an issue of what happens when a notification is on your screen and a new notification comes in. Do you delete that first one? Does it get overwritten? What do you do? This becomes an even bigger issue if you have something that needs to be manually interacted with by the user, say something that's important, and they have to actually click on it or dismiss it themselves before it goes away. So if you have another notification that's supposed to come in, and then what do? Do you just delete that first one? Well, then the user to interact with it, and you don't know if they got the information you're trying to tell them. So that's an issue. And to solve this, we're going to create a queue. All right, so here's our app, and you can see we have some text, some timeout, which is in milliseconds, and several levels of the notification. So you have your success, info, warning, and even error. We can even set something as important. So if you have something come in, it hangs around for 3 seconds, and then it goes away. But if you have something that's important, and it comes around, you need to interact with it in some way. You need to either close it manually, or if you had something that had different actions, you'd have to interact with it some way, right? But if you did have something that was important and you had something new come in, you want to make sure that the first one, because it's important, you don't want it to get overwritten. You don't want it to get deleted or pushed out of the way to make room for the new one to come in. You want it to stand its ground. You want the user to interact with it, and then the new notifications can come in, which is great. And the cool thing is this app actually has 2 different modes to it, so you can even say multi. Save that. You come here, these are actually going to stack. So that's pretty cool. So they'll stack up. You can have different levels, like I said, some your infos, your warnings, your errors. You can see, you can style this however you want, but we just have essentially 2 different ways to display notifications for the price of 1, really. All right, so why don't we dive into the code? And here is our actual app right now. The only thing you need to know is we're using Tailwind, and I have a few classes here that are not really, we're not going to go over. There's some list stuff here. This is our transitions that we're going to look into a little bit, but we're not going to go into the CSS. This will all be up on Stack Blitz if you want to take a look. So we have our app. We have it running right now. If you come back here, this is the app that we have locally. If you submit something, nothing's working, but you can reset everything just like this, right? Or resets it to the factory settings, right? And all right, so why don't we dive in? We have composables and components. Let's create a new composable and call it useAlerts.ts. And let's start off with our test as well. So useAlerts.spec.ts. And we're going to describe our composable. So useAlerts composable. The first thing I want to test is that it has an empty array to begin with. So it has an empty array at the start, however you want to word it. We're just going to say we're going to expect our, keep it as Q. It's going to be reactive, so we'll say value, and to strict equal an empty array. Well, we don't have the queue yet, so let's save that. Let's go over to our tests, and we see so let's go over to our test, and we can see that, we have 1 failing, but we don't know what the queue is. So we'll go to use alerts and create our composable. So we need to export const of use alerts. And that's going to be a function that returns what we need. So we need return, and we'll just say that, and we'll need the ref that we spoke about, the queue. So const q equals ref. It's going to be an empty array. And why don't we import ref? So we'll go down here, we'll find it from view, and that automatically imports it for us. And we just need to return it. It's q. And the reason that we have Q outside of our composables is that it allows it to be more of a global reference. So if you use it in one component and in another component, it's not like it's getting overridden or we're having multiple Qs around. We have one Q. So everything goes to this one spot. So save that, and we'll go back to our alerts, and we'll say, yeah, we got to import that. So we'll say const, and we'll destructure Q out of equals useAlerts. And it gets auto-imported, save it, and we have a pass and test. Great. So let's see if we can pass actually some alerts into it. So it can have alerts pushed to the queue. So this is a fun spot where we can actually start sketching out how we want to interact with this. We're going to be using it, so might as well make it feel good to us. You know, what are we going to use as the function here? I need a function, and I like having to pass in a whole object to it so that we can customize every one of these alerts. I keep saying alerts, so why don't we stick with alert? But you could say maybe notify. You could say shout, whatever you wanted to call it. Let's stick with alert though. And like I said, a little object, and I need some kind of text in there, some kind of description or body. Let's go with text. And I'll just say hey. And then we're going to expect that the q.value, and there should be a whole one in there. So we're going to say the first one, I just want to grab the text out of it. I'm going to say to be hey. Save that. And we are failing. So let's go to, we don't have an alert. Let's go to use alerts. Let's get rid of app and main while we're at it. So this is going to be a function here. We'll say const alert equals function, and let's return it. Alert, save, okay, and the next issue, oh, it's still not a function because we didn't pull it in here. Alert, save, and check to see what's happening now. What's our next failure? So we're expecting the queue, that text, and this is saying that it's undefined. So we never actually pushed it. So the function needs to take in the alert, and we're just going to say q.value.push. And we're just going to pass it the whole alert. Save, and now we have 2 passing tests. Fantastic. We're going pretty well here. I think I want to have some kind of ID, any kind of identifier that you want alongside your alerts, so you can call them out individually, and they're very unique to itself. So why don't we have a function like that? So it can have an auto incremented ID. Okay, and we're just going to say here we have alert and alert. We'll say the first one is first, the second one is second. Now we expect the first one, 0, that makes sense, the ID would be, let's start with 0, and the next one could be 1. Save it, and we're getting a failure. Yeah, we don't have any IDs. Let's go up here. Let's say, all right, we'll pass it in right here. So let's destructure our alert and just add the ID in here. And we'll make it 0 for now, just to see what happens. Save. And let's see. All right, the first one is 0, and the second one should be 1, but it's still 0, because obviously we never incremented this. How about we create some ref for this? ID.value. Const ID equals ref, and we'll just turn it to 0. All right, and save it. And yeah, we still have, now we're expecting that second one to be a 1. We never updated this. So ID.value plus plus. Save that too. And okay, it's we run everything. it's saying that the first one expected 0 to be 1, id.value, id.value plus plus. D.value. Why are you doing that to me? Oh, gotta update this one as well. 1. Save it. Now we have 3 passing tests, which is pretty cool. Let's just, while we're at this, we'll say we want this first one to have a text. Just want to make sure that we're getting the correct guy here. We'll say first. Save it. And it's failing now. Well, the first one is, yeah, we're expecting the first one. We're getting hey. Hey, that's not in our test. That's up here. That's interesting. And if we take this passing test and we put it down here, now we have 2 failing tests. Because the first one expected an empty array, but we actually already have something in our queue. So we never reset our queue. We're not, updating things. So let's pull this back up to the front. And down here, why don't we, let's see, we need to come up with a way to reset the whole queue. So why don't we do that? Int and reset the queue. And we need to do some alerts here. Let's say we expect the queue.value to have a length of 2. And then we want to run some kind of function, maybe call it reset. And then I expect that to have a length of 0. And I just want to focus on this one test, so we'll do a dot only. Save it. And we don't have a reset function. Go here. And we'll say const reset equals a function. And we'll say the queue.value equals just an empty array. And we need to return that here. Set. Save it. Pull it into our tests all the way up here. So set. Save it. And we have a passing test. But I want to see one more thing about this. If we reset it and then create a new alert, we expect it to have a length of 1, obviously. And then we want to expect that the queue.id, we'll grab the first one, ID to be 0. So we want that to also be, can reset the queue and the ID. Save it. And yeah, we're actually at 2 right now. So I like also resetting the ID when you call reset because we want to make sure that we're starting with a very brand new test every single time. Nothing's stored in the state. Everything is fresh. So if we have a test later on that's requiring that an ID is equal to a very specific number, we don't have to worry about how many tests are run before that. So in our reset, let's just say id.value equals 0. Save that. Now we have a passing test. Let's come back out here and get rid of dot only. Save it. And we're back down to 2 failing tests. And right now we can see, yeah, this one should have a length of 2. What else we have? This should be first. So there's a lot of weird little things going on, but it's because we haven't done anything with that reset. We should say up here, we're going to run this before each of our tests. I just want to reset everything. Save it. And now everything is passing because we're starting with a very fresh instance of the composable, of the ID, the queue. Everything is fresh for each test. So it didn't matter where this test now comes into play, it'll also pass. If I have that come down here, save it, it's still passing because it doesn't care about what happened before it. Great. So now we have our reset, we have everything there. Why don't we start trying to render this out to the actual app? And we're going to create here the alert wrapper component. And when I'm creating something that has like multiple components, I like having a wrapper around it and then the smaller pieces within that. And the reason we're also doing that here is because I want the alert to be responsible for itself and not having to worry about finding itself within an array and then doing all this kind of other stuff. This is a little bit more straightforward. All right, so we have the component. We should also have a test. So alert wrapper.spec.ts. And we'll start with the tests. Describe. We'll say alert wrapper component. And yeah, so it can render an alert. All right, so first thing we want to do is alert something with a text. Let's say, hey, and we'll say we need a wrapper, so we need to mount this. So we'll say const wrapper equals mount, and give it the, what is it, alert wrapper. That gets auto imported for us. And for some reason, mount does not want to auto import for us. I don't see it here at all, so we'll just do that manually. Import mount from @view test utils. Okay, and we expect the wrapper.html to include or to contain that hey. So yeah, we have a failing test, and yeah, we need a template or script is required within here. Makes sense? We didn't do anything here yet. So I have a little snippet, view3 template. That just spins this up for us, makes it nice and easy. And if you wanted to slime this out, you could say div a, and this would pass. Well, we got to bring in alert first. So const alert equals useAlerts. That in, save. Now we have a passing test because that, but if you decided to change this, and that should also be howdy, you save this, it's going to fail because howdy doesn't exist in there. Hey does. So we'll go back to our component here. We'll get rid of that. We want this to be dynamic anyway. So we'll say our alert.text. So this is going to be through an array. So v4 equals alert in the queue. And up here, we want to say the queue. So const queue equals useAlerts. And save that. Now it's passing because the text that we gave it was hey and howdy, and that works. Okay, let's go to the next. So now we have something that can render out. We need something to say that once it's rendered after a given amount of time, it can actually be removed. So how about it dismisses itself after a given time. So now we have all of this. Bring that in here too. And let's give it a timeout. We'll say timeout as 3 seconds. And then we need a way to actually have that timeout happen, right? We don't want to wait for 3 seconds within the test. We want to actually kind of stub out how this is working. So we'll say await vi.advanced timers by time 3000, and we'll say this is an async now. And then all we need to do is test that this does not contain howdy. So we're using the advanced timers by time, so we need to actually within our before each, we need to stub that out. So before each, we need to use vi.useFakeTimers. And since we're using fake timers in all of these, we need to reset that after each of these as well. After each, say vi.useRealTimers. Okay. Now I save this, and it fails. It contained howdy, but after 3,000 milliseconds, it does not. It still contains howdy. Okay. This is where we're going to bring in a brand new component that's going to be responsible for itself in its own state. It's going to call this alert.view. And this one won't have its own tests because all the tests are going to happen within alert wrapper. View template. I need a ref here. We do need a prop. I'm going to pass in the whole alert object straight here. So we'll say const props equals define props. And this is going to take, it's going to wind up looking like this, which this is more of like a TypeScripty way of doing stuff. And I like it a little bit better. Alert. It's just going to be an empty object for now. And we'll say, we'll just say a div. And we'll just print it out. So props.alert.text. Save. And in here, instead of a div, we'll say alert. Pull that in for us. We have the alerts. We don't need any of that. And then we just have to pass it in alert equals alert. And while we're at it, might as well set up the key, which is alert.key. ID. Save. Yeah, it's still working as far as displaying that it has the howdy, but it's still not removing itself. And that's what our alert is going to handle. So when this gets mounted, that's when I need to start the countdown for its lifespan, if you will. So how about onMounted? Pull it in from view. And then we'll say if the props.alert has a timeout, we need to set a timeout. So set timeout. And the actual timeout that we're passing it is going to be the props.alert.timeout. And what happens in here is we're going to say the q.value equals q.value.filter. And we say alert.id. We want everything unless it's not equal, as long as it will return everything unless it equals this exact ID. Props.alert.id. And we can see a lot of these little TypeScripty issues. Well, this one, we actually need to bring in the Q. So const Q equals useAlerts. Save that. And let's see, we still have one that is not passing. The Q gets filtered and updated. Okay. As long as it has a timeout. And let's see, that's going in through there. That's all saved. Okay, give it the timeout wrapper. We're waiting for this. Let's go check to see if everything is working within our actual app. So let's go look at the app. We need a few things here. We need to const. We need the Q. We need alert. And that's it, I think. So this is equal to useAlerts. And when we create an alert down here, we'll say alert, and we'll just pass it in the form inputs. And down here, when we reset, we'll just reset, which is up here again. We didn't bring that in. Reset. And the Q is used way down here at the bottom. Here's the Q, and here's the alert wrapper that we also need to import. Now it's an orange, saying that that's working. Come back to our app. Yeah, we got some things working here, and they are being removed. Yeah, and they're all back down to 0. So it's working, and it should be working within our test. Okay, so you know what I think this is? If we actually take a look at the queue right now, to match inline snapshot, let's grab the queue here. Come all the way down here. bring this up here. You can see that we still have the howdy. And actually, if we bring this up here, after we mount, we have a couple, because we're not resetting anything. Here's our timeout one. Here's the one that we set before that. So we actually don't have, this isn't being reset, right? We still need to actually do that. We'll get rid of the queue. Let's go to reset. And before each, I'm just going to reset. And come back down here. Don't need this anymore. Change that. Save it. And now we're passing. This is why it's so important to always have fresh information. You don't want to have to be troubleshooting. Why didn't that work? And spend 20 minutes looking around and being like, oh yeah, it's because the queue actually never got updated. All right, so that works. And let's see what the next thing is. Well, while we're at it, since we can set a timeout, these should actually have a default timeout. So how about this? It can set a default timeout. These should always time out for us unless they're marked as important, so I don't have to worry about adding timeout to it each and every time. So let's do this. Copy all that, save that here, and we're going to get rid of timeout. And now we're going to do something kind of interesting. We're going to make sure that this is still around at 2999. So just before 3 seconds, it should still wait, still be available. And then at 3000, it should get removed, and we should have the name howdy. And yeah, it still exists at the 2.2999 mark, but at 3000 it was not removed because it was never given a default text. So let's go to our useAlerts. We'll say, let's break this out a little bit better. All right, and we'll say a timeout. We'll say alerts.timeout for 3000. Save that. Now it's passing. Run everything. Everything's still passing. Fantastic. But I think this is a good time to start messing around with some of our actual Typescripts, right? Let's create some types for this. So type, I'm going to export it. Let's say T alerts. I like having a T in front of my types, I in front of my interfaces. It's just a little mental thing for me to see when I visualize it, that I know what it is. It's like I'm not pulling in some kind of class called alert. It's just a type. I need my ID, which is going to be a number. I need a string of, text is going to be a string. I need a timeout, which is going to be a number. But I don't want this to be required, so it's going to be optional. And let's see, while we're at it, yeah. So this is going to be a key alert array. Great. And this right here, right now has an any, and we need to make that a T alert. And this all seems fine. But if we come to our app, where we're actually pushing that over, we're creating that, it doesn't have an ID. The ID is missing. But we don't want to send in the ID, and we don't want to have duplicate types just because of the ID. So what we're going to do is we're going to omit this. Omit T alert, and just pass it a string of ID, so it knows to get rid of ID from there. Save this, go back to our alerts, and you can see that we have the omitted ID from there. So great. That's working. If we come to alert, we still have this text area and timeout and all this junk. It's because we just have an object here. How about we pull it in? T alert. Pull it in. And yeah, now we know that there's an alert, timeout, which is a number. We have an ID, which is a number. And we have our text down here, which is a string. So we know we have all of that stuff. And what we need to do also is when we're pulling this in, we don't need to do this. It's just something I like. say it's a type. Type t-alert, and then some kind of function or whatever this is going to be, and that's awesome. Save. Everything is working as intended. Okay, what else do we have? Let's go to our spec here. So we now have a way to have a timeout that's default. We have, after the given timeout, it double checks everything. What else do we want? Well, we need to make sure that if we set something as important, that it's dismissed. So we want to make sure that it sticks around past a certain amount of time. And then we want to make sure that you can click a button and it's automatically, then it's dismissed, right? So how about it can be marked? It can only dismiss an important alert by clicking the close button. So we'll say, let's grab some of this. Oops. We'll say the text is howdy, and we'll give this a timeout of 3000 as well, just to make sure that we know this is just very specific to this test. And how about is important? And it's going to be true. So the wrapper should still contain howdy. And then we wanted to make sure that after we perform some kind of click, so wrapper await wrapper dot, we're going to find, and we're going to need some button in there. We're going to trigger some kind of click on that function. So, all right, first off, let's make this async. And next we need to find that button. So I'm going to actually come over to our code here. And in our alert, I have a bunch of classes and stuff. This is all Tailwind. I'm going to pull this in, but this has our text and our button. And copy that. So let's go to alert. Come down here, paste that in. We have, you can see that we're missing a function here, and as is important is not within the type that we had, or type. This we're not going to worry about right now. And save this, and it's passing. Find trigger click not to contain howdy. Right. So this shouldn't pass. We want this to still say. This should have, let's see, wrapper to contain, await that. This should not have passed. There we go. Yeah. There we go. Yeah, so this doesn't pass because it, the timers got past 3,000 milliseconds, and it no longer contains howdy. So we need to find some button. If we come to our alert, we have a button down here with a data test ID. Copy that. Here, we're going to look for that data test ID. And then we're going to trigger the click on it. And we're going to get a fail, and it still says it contains. So we actually didn't fix that first issue. And it's right up here. Unmounted, if it has a timeout, then we're closing it, but we want to make sure it doesn't have importance. So as long as it has a timeout and is not props, .alert is important. And again, we can see that we're missing this type. So let's go back to useAlerts. Up here, I have is important. It's going to be a Boolean, and it's optional. Now we come back here, and we can see that is important as a Boolean. Save, come down, and yeah, we had that trigger. We found it, it still exists. We're trying to find that close button. It was found because it didn't throw an error here, triggering the click on it, but it didn't do anything. That's because close doesn't exist. Let's come up here, create a new function, const close equals a function, and it's exactly this. So why don't we just remove that, paste it there, and then we just call close here, and while we're at it, let's clean it up a little bit. There we go. Save. Now we're passing, run everything, everything's still working. So now we're closing that only when it's important. Great. We can also, let's see, hop around everywhere. Should probably make sure that that close button only appears if we have an important text, important alert. So it only displays a close button when alert is important. So now we're just going to say this one, alert. I'm just going to say false. Get rid of this timeout. And we should see wrapper. Const wrapper equals mount alert wrapper, and then we want const expect wrapper dot find. Give it that piece again. That. Let's copy this here. Copy this. Make sure that that has its closing bracket. Okay. Find to be truly. Be falsy. To be falsy. And then we'll reset. And then we'll alert something else. And it is important to be true. And that should be truly. Let's see what we get. Okay. On an empty DOM wrapper. Let's just see what we get here. Save that. Okay, it's looking for on an empty DOM wrapper. All right, so right now it's saying that we can't find something on an empty DOM wrapper. And what we really want to say is viewed test utils has this utility. So when you're trying to find it, we're just going to say if it exists, and that should be falsy. And this will pass now because, yeah, exists returned false, so it is falsy. So now I want to reset the alerts, and then I want to alert something else new, and right down here, this should be exists. Save this, and it's going to fail, and it doesn't know that it's there. But if we make this async, and right after alert, we say await wrapper.vm.next tick. Now it's passing because now the wrapper had a chance to update. And there we go. So that is that piece. So if we come back to our actual app here, we'll see that we have some things coming in, but it's all it's styled a little nicely, which is cool. But yeah, there's something wrong with the alert wrapper, which I'll take care of right now. Come back to our stacklets here. The wrapper is going to have all these classes. Again, this is from Tailwind, so this isn't anything particular to us. All you have to know is that we have this transition group, which is list. Copy this. Delete all of that. Name it box on the other one, alert, and this is now queue. Save it, and everything is still working. So let's run back to our guy here, refresh, and you can see that we're actually still stacking everything. So we're not just getting the very first one, which is something that we want. And you can also see, is this? Yeah, that's actually working. So what are we going to do? We need to, what we need to do is we want to make sure that we're only getting the very first one in the queue. Let's go to our wrapper spec. Go here, say, let's describe something. Describe, and we'll say single mode. And we'll describe multi-mode. And now in here, we'll say before each. Now we need some way to create some kind of mode for this. And I think the easiest way is just to create a new ref within our useAlerts. Right here, and this is going to be const mode equals a ref. And it's going to be set initially to single. Actually, I don't think it needs to be a ref. Let's not make it a ref for now. And while we're at it, might as well just make a single or multi. So now it has some typescripting. And we'll send this out here, right here. So mode, and I'm going to leave a little comment for testing purposes. All right, come back up here. It's seen, it knows it's single or multi. Save that, and in our, over here, in our test, why don't we set the mode up? Down here, let's say mode equals single. I pulled in mode. Oh, it's a constant. So we do need it to be a ref. Okay. Value. Go back to alerts. We'll say ref. And can't have that there. We need to do something like this. Okay. Perfect. So now mode ref single multi. Save that. Go back here. It's now single. And we want to get out of there. It can display only one alert at a time. We'll say alert text is first. And we'll have second. Now I want to make sure that expect wrapper, so we need wrapper, const wrapper equals mount alert wrapper, wrapper.html to contain first, but stop it, but to not contain second. Save that. And yeah, we're not passing because it should not contain this, and it does. So what I want to do is, because we have a whole queue here, and to make this a little bit more usable with the single and multi versions, why don't we create a rendered queue? So const rendered queue, and this is going to be computed. Pull that in from view. We'll say if mode.value equals single, we want to return, and if the queue.value.length, we want to send in the queue, the very first one in its own array, because we have the v4. Queue.value, very first one, or just an empty array. Otherwise, we'll return the whole queue.value. And we'll return all of that within our return statement. So we'll have our queue and our rendered queue. All right, now we have to go to alert wrapper. And instead of queue here, we need our rendered queue. Pull this up here. We don't need regular queue anymore. We need the rendered queue. And we are passing 6 of them. We have 1 failure. Let's see what that failure is. 10 passed, 1 failed. You know what I think this is? Because we created this describe, which doesn't do anything. And now it's passing. It's just saying that we failed because there's nothing in this. You can get rid of that, but it's fine. I want to make sure that you have all of this. So check this out. Copy all of this. Did I just delete all that? And come down here. And before each, the mode will be multi. And yeah, you can have this. Do this. It's automatic. Huh? You're not going to give me the key there? There it goes. Multi. And yeah, first, second, and then we have this, which is, this should exactly enter that. So perfect. So now we have a description for our multi-mode and our single mode. Everything is all hooked up. If we come back to our guy here, we can have everything that way. If we run to our alert here and change this back to multi, save it, come back to our here. Now it's all stacking. So perfect. The only thing we didn't test for was our infos, but I'm going to leave that to you guys. Obviously the type should be here, so type, and it's going to be, you know what? Let's create that type. Export type. We'll say T alert type equals yeah. We'll say success info warning and error. And the type is T alert type. Perfect. Let's save that. Everything's still working. You could create some new tests for that. So it says here, type is incompatible. So this is a kind of fun thing. We're getting a Typescript issue here, and because we're setting it right there, we need to figure out what that is. So the initial state as T alert type, and that fixes that. So now it's just saying that this is what this is going to be. Cool. And then you just create some tests about that. So, all right, that's going to do it for today. If you learned anything new, leave a comment. If you liked the video, thumbs up, YouTube stuff. And that's going to be the end of it for me today. I hope you guys use this. I really like it. I think it's a really cool way to use alerts. And yeah, every time I need to use alerts, I reach for this, which is some kind of queue, because it needs to be made sure that there's 100% no chance of missing some kind of information. So that's going to do it for me today. All right, catch you guys next time. Cheers.